Hi, well, I've just been to the Evesham Angling Festival. It's a weekend that I really enjoy. It's on the River Avon at Evesham, and it's a fantastic stretch of river for match fishing. It's not particularly the best fishing river, I think, in terms of catching lots of fish, but in terms of fishing and different types of fishing and being involved in a tight match, it can be excellent. Access is great as well, which is always nice. The 3 days are really different. You've got Saturday and Sunday, which are both individual matches, and then on the Monday there's a team match. So on the Saturday I was lucky enough to get an invite, because the structure of the event is to have 35 anglers that qualify and 35 invited anglers, maybe anglers that have been part of the England team or high profile anglers, which I think gives a nice mix of you know, local experts, if you like, and you know, guys who have been a bit further afield and not had a chance to get down there. So I think it's a nice combination. It's worked well for years, and it's really exciting at Evesham because there's a big crowd there. Lots of people like to come and watch, and I think that gives an extra buzz. You don't get that all the time in match fishing, so it's quite exciting. I drew peg 7 on the Saturday. I think 5, 6, 7, 8. There's usually a few fish around there, roach and what have you. I was quite excited, to be honest. The week before, I'd been on the Saturday to fish one of the bloodworm events. I'd had a fantastic day's fishing. I had 10.5 pound, all on bloodworm. I actually won the match, so I felt I could have gone into it much better. I'd noticed that there'd been quite a few bloodworm fish caught throughout. Better areas, of course, but I was sort of quite excited that there was going to be a few bites. We had a real strong lineup. There was sort of quite talked about. There was John Arthur, myself, Matt Godfrey, Cameron Hughes and Darren Davis all in the line. 5 very strong anglers. I think that was always going to be quite an entertaining match to watch. Unfortunately, we started the match and there was an odd bite, small fish, but then they quickly faded and nobody was really catching anything. I was a bit disappointed, to be honest, because I felt that we were all going to have a good match. Everybody's an excellent angler there. Maybe some of those bigger roach will show up. Sometimes they show up on 6, 5. So I was a little bit sort of disappointed that they hadn't shown up, but it was one of those where I was catching a few bleak, and I think we were all fishing for a bit of pride, really. Nobody wanted to catch sort of a pound or next to nothing. I think when that happens, as it did to me last year when I just sat for a big fish all day, because there wasn't any roach feeding, I felt a little bit deflated at the end of the day. So I felt I'd rather fish hard for whatever I could, maybe win a section. 150 quid for a section win, got to be worth doing. So that was my sort of plan in my head. But as always at Evesham, especially in the big individual matches, you've got to give yourself a chance of winning the match. So I had a bonus fish line. Now there's lots of ways of doing that at Evesham. You can fish with pellets for a barbel. You can fish with maggots or worms, big baits, trying to catch eels, tench, perch, anything like that. And of course you've got your bloodworm fish, but those bigger fish can often hold the key in getting away. So my plan is usually to fish chopworms and casters, because I feel that anything will eat them. I felt like fishing a pellet like I did last year, you're only ever fishing for a barbel. You know, tench and eels and big perch, you're unlikely to catch those. So I felt that by fishing with chopworms and casters I could catch a couple of big perch or something like that. But my gear was quite strong. It wasn't stupidly strong, it wasn't really strong line. I was fishing an 013 bottom because I wanted a chance of catching these odd perch. But you know, reflow power and that takes some serious braking. But I had strong elastic on, a 13 hollow on, a really strong main line, and I thought, well, if I hook a big fish I've got a good chance of getting it out. So what I was doing, I was catching bleak and little roach, and I was just having 5-10 minutes every now and again on that big fish line. About an hour and a half to go. I've had a look on that line for probably the 2nd or 3rd time, and there's been a bit of an indication on the float as if there was a fish in the peg, so just giving it that extra couple of minutes, and all of a sudden it's flown under, and I was attached to something probably a bit larger than my gear was completely designed for. But like I said, knew I had a great chance of getting it out. Headed off downstream, but then I've quickly put the pressure on and it's sort of turned and come back towards me. I'm quite aggressive when it comes to playing fish. Not that I pull hard, but I feel like I always pull to the limit of my tackle, which I think is important because you try to gain control of them. Certainly there's a lot of marginal weed and what have you. And then before I knew what was happening, there was a barbel on the top, and all of a sudden it was in the net. It was probably £7. Didn't weigh him. I'd be surprised if he was any bigger than 8, but I was certainly £7, which was a great feeling. Big crowd there, really exciting feeling. I knew there'd been one caught £10 plus, but I still knew I had a good chance of framing in the match with a big fish like that. I tried for another one for the rest of the match, but I also tried to catch some small fish as well, because I thought, well, £7-8 plus £4-5 of small fish is always going to be a mega weight on there. Just couldn't catch those small fish. If I hooked a roach, a pike took it straight away, so it was a bit demoralising really. I sort of felt to myself, well, you know, I've got this big barbel in the net, but I'm trying to catch odd fish, but I ended up fishing again. I had one more bite on the worm, a decent perch, about 8 ounces. I probably finished with £3.5, possibly £4 of little fish to weigh £11.5, which was enough for second in the match. And the pickup is absolutely fantastic on these matches. So it's £1,500 into the kitty and a real great start to the weekend. It was really exciting to have that moment with the big fish and some fish to back it up. So that was really nice. The next day, drew peg 51. It's just round the corner from where they tend to catch a few decent roach, but again the roach hadn't really been feeding. I'd heard rumours the day before that people had seen the roach topping and not really been able to catch them, so I wasn't holding my breath, but of course fed the bloodworm line again. Fished slightly differently from my bonus fish on this peg. Felt that a lot of my cover and pace was long. There's a lot of sort of weed just past 16 metres, I'd probably say 17, 18 metres out. So what I did was I set up a nice light rig for fishing with a maggot, and then I bait dropped some maggots and worms on a long pole to try and catch an odd bonus. I've had a big perch after about an hour on my maggot rig, running the rig through. That was a real bonus, snagged me a couple of times, got a bit lucky, pulled in the right directions and it came free. Absolutely buzzing to net him. He was probably £1.5. And then I've gone on the nailing rig when there was no more bites on the running rig, and I've had a really exciting match. I've had 9 eels. Those of you who caught some decent sized eels know they pull really hard, so every time you hook one, heart's in the mouth and you've got to try and get the fish in. And it was really exciting. I was putting some fish together, and again it was fishing hard. I'd heard there'd been 2 tench caught at the bottom end of the length, and possibly a couple of anglers catching some roach. But anyway, it didn't transpire that there was a great deal caught, and I finished with £8.3, which was 9 eels and a big perch. Missed a bite right on the whistle, that was really annoying. Barely missed a bite all day, so frustrated to miss one on the whistle, because I thought that possibly could have cost me winning. When the weights came in, it turned out that Dean Barlow had £9.12, I think, of roach on peg 6. Those big roach had fed. I knew they lived around there, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hadn't fed the day before for any of us. Dean's caught them really well. Dean's a fantastic angler, and I know the win meant a lot to him, so didn't begrudge him too much, because that left me second again. Another nice pickup, so I'd had 2 fantastic days. I suppose second place both days, you really can't complain at that. I'd love to win one of those events, but at the same time I think second both days was very satisfying. So 2 totally different methods that I'd fished. Obviously both times catching bigger fish because the smaller fish weren't feeding. And then Monday took us on to the team match, and the team match on Monday was quite interesting because we'd had a bit of rain overnight, and there was a little bit of colour coming down the river, starting from about peg 3 or 4. I drew peg 1, which you're probably groaning if you're watching this, thinking, oh, peg 1, that was a good peg. Yeah, it is a good peg. It's a very good peg. I'd say it's a lot better peg for fishing as an individual, because you can sit and fish for bonus fish. There've been 2 tench caught there the day before. It's got a habit of throwing up some big fish, odd bream. The trouble is there's a lot of pike, so it's very difficult to fish for roach. You're also very close to the pathway behind you, which makes shipping back and forth very awkward. You have to swing round a bit or double ship. So I wasn't overly confident that I was going to catch a really big weight, but I felt that the nice thing about peg 1 is there is always bites. Gudgeon, little roach, little perch, rough. So even though you may be thinking, well, they're not very exciting, they are in a team match because you can put a weight together. You know that 4 or £5 pound is going to be absolutely brilliant for your team. So for me, it was just about putting whatever I could in the net. So a completely different match. Yeah, alright, I set up a line for looking for a bonus. Didn't spend a lot of time on it. Basically my thoughts were, if I was putting a fish in the net, I was going to stick with it. I wasn't going to waste time looking for a big fish. Caught a few fish to start with on the long pole, then started getting a lot of pike problems. 20 minutes or so in, if I didn't have a pike take a fish, a pike would always chase a fish, and very quickly the fish just unsettle and you can't get any bites. And that's what happened. They would be there. If I left the line for a little while, you could go out and catch 1 or 2 dead quickly again because they'd settled, but as soon as you caught a couple, there would be the pike again and try to strike. At one point, it just left me with an Olivet and nothing else. So that rig was a complete write-off. Very, very frustrating. I do really angers me when you've got pike problems in your swim, because you don't feel like you can fish properly. To sort of counter that, I started a line down my peg, short, and I caught a lot of rough, probably, well, at least 80, which is a lot of rough, but they were solid. There was 1 a chuck there, and I thought, just take them. They're probably 20 to the pound, you know, just keep putting them in the net, 25 to a pound possibly. Odd perch mixed in with them, and you know, I had a really decent run of those fish, and I thought, well, again, like I say, £5 going to be mega, so just keep putting those fish in the net. Did manage to sneak 2 or 3 decent roach last off. I think I hooked about 7 and got 3 out. The other 4 were just gobbled up within seconds, which left me with £6.12 and second in the section. Unbelievably, Dean Barlow drawn peg 6 again. He jokingly said to me in the morning that I was a bit of a draw bag, before telling me that he'd drawn probably the best roach peg on the river 2 days running. So I loved a bit of banter with Dean. He's a cracking guy, so you know, good luck to him. He's caught £9 of roach again, which just proves that his day before wasn't a fluke, and he really, not only is he on a good peg, but he's fished a good match, a really good match. So you can't knock anybody who obviously catches and puts those fish together. He's not had any pike problems at all, which, funnily enough, you don't tend to have much there either. So, you know, it's brought a lot of fish on. But that was exciting. I think I was 5th in the match and 2nd in the section, but all of that is irrelevant. It's about the team. We finished 3rd. We tied with points on Dorking, but lost out on weight. And Starlets have won the event. Really strong team there now. Really consistent all the way through. Top class boys. So, you know, I think they were all in the top 4 of the section. So fully deserved as far as I'm concerned. You know, it makes a big difference, I think, when you're fishing at that level. In the team events, when there's 5 of you, you've got to be on it from the start, and you've got to have a decent enough peg to put some fish together. All those things make a big difference, and I think once again this year there's been bites all the way through, that little bit of extra colour, and suddenly the fish were feeding, and it made for a decent match. I noticed the weights were a lot higher than they had been the days before, sort of 3, 4, 5 pound. You know, not big weights, because Evesham's not like that, but decent fishing. So, you know, really enjoyable and a great weekend. I really can't complain at all. I was just sorting my box out, because I took all my floats down, and I had some floats here that I've been using at the weekend. I'd used a 4 gram Crusoe torpedo for those eels that I caught long, holding it dead still. A lot of the bites were like this sort of thing, and then committed, so that worked really well. I used the PT8s all the time, almost exclusively, for my roach fishing. I'm just trying to get a few out for you here. Look, those. Almost exclusively. A nice rugby ball shaped body. I've just painted the tips. I've just given the tips an extra layer of paint so I can see the float well. I also like to use 4 rubbers on the wire just to keep everything stable. So that wire's, you know, really stable. And just really nice control of the float through the peg. That definitely catches you a lot of extra fish at Evesham. I also set wagglers up. I had fish wagglers both days. Some of these 4AA new straight Preston ones, they work really nicely. So they all need sorting out and stocking back up for the coming matches. But like I said, a great weekend. I'm off to the World Championships to help out with England over the next week or so. Probably going to try to get a bit of a blog on the bank for you there so you know what's going on. Shouldn't really have my phone on while I'm doing a blog, should I? But oh well. I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks very much. Bye.